quadrants is something that usually when I write, I'm writing about stuff that I've been doing for years. I know it inside and out. And the 4 quadrants was one of those articles that I just kind of had an aha moment and knocked the article out, hoping that I wasn't gonna find something about it later on that was like, oh, yikes, that actually doesn't really work. But the article was written some years ago and I use it more than ever. It is one of my go-to in decision making. As folks that I work with learn more about handling and you explore more turn cues, especially, I feel that the core basic how to make the decisions on where to be and what to do gets a little bit glossed over sometimes. And that's what I was saying a minute ago about the 3 hats being trainer versus handler versus competitor. I didn't say the third one a few minutes ago. I went on to something else. So in Clean Run, that's where I went off on my Clean Run spiel. They have just finished doing my 3 hats of agility, and we will be offering that through the Clean Run Learning Center, some webinars, so that you can really understand where your strengths are as far as competitor, handler, or trainer. And I find that every subject and every issue falls into one of the 3 categories. So last week we did a bit of training, and today we're going to do a bit of handling. So this is all about where to go, and it does look like where to go on course to execute turn cues. And it does look like everybody is muted. So I'm going to talk about the article for the next 20 minutes or so. Maybe you have a pen and a pad where you could jot down your questions as they come up. And then last week we asked questions first. And I'm going to take just a second here. Kate and Gwen are both here. And last week, Gwen threw me a little bit with a question. I know some of you were here last week, so I'm just going to go here for 1 minute. Anne Marie is smiling at me. So you guys, at the end of that article last week, it talked about sweeping a clean cue under the carpet. So you'll be able to go back and watch as soon as we get them up if you don't know what we're talking about. But and what that meant was, and I said, oh my gosh, I'm not putting my finger on that. And Kate said, I think you mean blah, blah, blah. And Kate was exactly right. Sometimes when a dog is shy, we'll give it a really perfectly good cue, especially in competition. And if the dog doesn't do it and we're afraid of his little feelings and we're afraid of hurting his feelings or making him confused, we'll let him do whatever, even though the cue was clean, the cue was reasonable. And I was saying in the article, don't be careful about doing that, because then the dog gets really mixed up about what the cue is. Well, is the cue to go by the weed pole entrance, or was the cue wrong? So that's clarifying on last week, and that may be something that when you send me reviews, you say, don't clarify something from last week, it throws us. But I think for Gwen and Kate, it makes sense. So without further ado, let me go to screen sharing. I almost left you guys. I went all by myself. And hopefully you can see practically training 4 choices. If you'd nod your head at me, Anne Marie, do you see it? See the article? So the screen sharing didn't happen? Yes. Okay. Okay, good. I see heads. Okay, thank you. Handling choices have been plaguing handlers forever, and these days there are more choices than ever, and I mean turn cues. At the end of the day, we all need some basic concepts to hang our hats on as we make our handling decisions. What I mean by that is I call that my first option handling. So when I'm handling a course, I have my first preference that I know. And that's when the lane and the line and the timing and the position can all be, because of my training and because of the course design, exactly as I would prefer them. It's my first choice. It's Yahoo. I can be here when the dog is there. I can use a turn cue that we're fluent in, and I can be in the perfect position in order to execute the perfect timing. So those are my Yahoos. And whenever I can, my first choice handling. So those are what I'm looking for when I'm walking a course. Now, in the upper levels, there's usually at some point, there's usually 4 points of execution that need consideration. And one of these days we'll do, how I walk a course, and that can be its own deal. And so when I don't get my first choice, I have my second choice. Like, okay, if I can't do that, if I can't be in the exact ideal SERP position, what will happen if I'm not? What will happen if I'm a little bit off? Can I still pull it off? So remember, that first choice is ideal. I mean, I'm 12 feet ahead of the front cross. I'm a good 10 feet past the second stanchion of the SERP. And you'll notice that I have these specifics at my fingertips. I know where I want to be. I also know, and this is in the article too, how far I can be off of a pinwheel and still do it. So when I'm walking a course, I'm rarely in the frame of mind of, sometimes I'll say to a student, well, can you send 12 feet? Because to get to that front cross, you need to send to the tunnel 12 feet. And the student will say, yeah. And what I'm looking for is, I can send 22 feet and leave before they're 4 feet before the tunnel. So that means that they've worked on it and they have an idea. So that's a little side tip of knowing, you're not out there with a tape measure, guys, but you can send 20 feet to the tunnel if you have to. You can send 12 feet to the tunnel if you have to. You know that you have to wait until you have a toenail on vinyl on that tunnel before you can leave. It's not good or bad, right or wrong. It's where you're at with your training. Sometimes, you guys, it's like, I could send 20 feet to the broad jump the last time I trained it. And that was, let me think, a long time ago. So this is having some basic concepts that you can hang your hat on. And a concept can be, my dog knows it, but he hasn't seen it in a long time. But basically basic. One of my concepts is which one of these 4 quadrants I'm going to be in to execute the information. It may not necessarily be a turn cue. It may also be a line change. So I like the line that I put my turn cues where my dog expects them to be. And I hear a lot of chat ringside and in lessons about what they think will work based on the configuration of the course. And at the trials, it can change as more dogs run. Well, that's working. Well, that's not working. That is working. So I will sometimes put a cross in a more difficult place. There's a diagram here that is perfect for what I'm talking about. It's box work. Then where it could go, a much more difficult place, because that's where my dog would expect the turn cue. And it's more important to me to constantly enhance my system, my language, my system of communication. It's more important to me to protect that than to do the minor adjustment that might be easier on me on that particular course. Do I ever make adjustments? Of course. Do I ever put the cross where I wouldn't want to? That's why I have first choice and second choice. But I do things whenever I'm doing the thing that isn't my first choice preference. I have a way to tell the dog, sorry, pal, this is one of those exceptions. It's usually a verbal. So The four quadrants is based on that I'm always trying to move in the direction that the course goes. So even the 3 steps of a front cross are going to go, I often talk about my other programs because it's all well thought out and it's all connected, everything I teach. And the feet first shows how to do the mechanics of not doing your front cross across to 180 or 270 is a classic, where you're actually traveling in the wrong direction before you get going on that last step to the correct direction. So as I'm in a quadrant, it's not just being plunked in the quadrant that's essential. It's traveling through the quadrant in the direction that the course is going. So those are deals. I feel like I cut deals with my dogs when they're babies of this is what it's going to look like and this is what it's going to be like, and it's going to look and be like that just as often as I can possibly make it. And when it isn't, you'll be told. So that's what I call my consistency cushion. When you have a consistency cushion, you can land in different places sometimes. So when I do have to make those exceptions, I'm up here now, I can do that without rocking my dog's confidence because we've got some consistency to rely on. So the 4 quadrants are right here. And every obstacle has the left side. If you're approaching it with the dog, you and the dog are facing it, it's you and the dog's left. It has the right side. It has the takeoff side or the approach. Your tunnels and your weave poles don't have takeoffs, they have approach sides. And then your landing side or your exit side. So this is a really great place to start with how to decide where you want to be. And in my classes, I don't let folks start making decisions until they know their course. And then we start with where would you ideally like to be? So on a SERP, I know where it is the biggest advantage to be. On a pinwheel, I know where the biggest advantage is to be. And where means when. When the dog is at X spot, it is going to be an enormous advantage for me to be here. And that is something that you know because you learned it and you taught it to yourself, or you learned it from me. So once I determine where it's ideal to be, all I have to do then is find out, is it possible for me to be there? And I hear all the time, every time I teach, well, I don't know. It's like, say, obstacle 18. Well, I don't know if I can be on the far side of 18. It's like, well, if you started out on 1 at the far side of 18, it was, well, I can't handle okay, then you can't handle the rest of the course from 18. But at what point could you be there and still get those obstacles for 15, 16, 17? Like, is there a way to be there? And whittle it down. Think about it. Don't get too caught up in, but think, well, if I did, we've talked about this in here before. If you want to get to a position on course, you've identified that it would be really rocking and the whole course. Sometimes you guys, there's 2 key points on the course. And if you can make those key points, even though it might be a real pain in the butt to do it, it might be really hard. If you can get those 2 keys, a whole bunch of other bits unlock for you. So then figuring out how you can be there. And what happens to a lot of students is they determine that they might be able to do it, but a whole bunch of stuff has to be just right. So I'll say to them, okay, if you do this here at this time when the dog is there, and you do this, and you do that, and you do this, and you do that, will it work? And that's your answer. That's when you can say, yeah, if I do all of that stuff, when the dog is over that jump, if I have my arm up and I up my voice and I say go on and I give him a collection cue and I turn my feet and I drop my arm when I'm supposed to and I rotate exactly when I should, yeah, he'll if I do it all right. And that's okay to have that if. It's okay to say, because that's what handling is. And then you go out there and you try your level best, and if it didn't work, hopefully you can know which little piece, because there's a lot of pieces. So when my handlers say, well, I'm afraid that if I, yeah, it might work, but I'm afraid if I blah blah blah, then he'll blah blah blah, and it's like, the doctor, it hurts when I do this. Well, then don't do that. Um, so I want you to be able to take that conversation with yourself and these decisions, and then go out there and give it your level best. For me, if I've got a move that is that can really make the rest of the course work, and it is not a simple thing to do, and it does rely on me doing this and this and this correctly. I do have to do it correctly. And then I actually don't feel bad, because it's like I gave it my best shot, and it was a lot to do. It was a tall order. But then I have my information on my weak spot, like I didn't project enough. I weight shifted back a little bit sooner than he needed. And then you can say, you know what, if that was trained a little better, he wouldn't be so sensitive to that weight shift. I need a little bit more work on my go on. I had to go in deeper to get that turn away from me. And if I worked on those turn away. So for me, I'm always in a win-win, whether it works or not. But one thing I don't like in handling is I don't like being afraid to try and then blowing it anyway and wishing I'd have just tried. It's easier. What I like is identifying all of the things that I need to try to do. Then all I got to do is remember them all. And, if I'm like you, if something goes a little squirrely at the start line, yeah, I might forget. Okay. So I already talked about, I don't think I can get there. You can actually get there if you leave from a different place sooner. You will get there. So this says, of course, you can get there if you leave from here. And then they say, I don't know if I can leave from there. And it's what could go wrong if you do. Well, he might pull off. And this is all of what I just talked about. So then you give it your very best shot. And when you're giving it your best shot in training, don't adjust after 3 attempts. I put 3 here. I'm up to like 5 now. So if you think your dog has a chance if you do this and this and this and this, and he doesn't, do it 3 to 5 times before you're sure he can't access that learning. So let's go to the diagrams, and you guys can let me know after, and if you want to be kind enough to send me some feedback on these. If it worked, if you needed the article in front of you, because I could always tell people to do that, or we're talking about how I might be able to access the article. So these are the 4 quadrants. And I put them here because this is the general space that I would handle entrances or exits from. Now, if you asked me if the box could move up or down and the line be in different places, I would say I don't know. I haven't thought about that enough. But for me right now, this is how I'm doing it. I'm pretty much chopping the obstacle right in half. And like I said, after having written this kind of on the fly when I first did it, I'm still using it. So I need to get my dog from the tunnel to the jump. This means when my dog exits the tunnel, I want to be in the quadrant where the next obstacle is located. So that's the green quadrant. I can be in the green quadrant when he exits. I can make any of several handling options, and turn cues happens. So figuring out how to get there based on where he's coming from is the math. So that's just your basics. in the second one, I've determined that I want to be in the spot where I'm at. That would actually be SERP position on the tunnel. So if you imagine this tunnel, a teeny tiny jump, if I had a jump right there, because the handler is past the 50% point if the obstacle was chopped in half. So this line that my cursor is on is chopping the tunnel in half, and the handler is on this side of it. So I can push on the dog's path to 2. So that means I ran from over here, guys, and it's a push. And I believe there's either a dog nose there or a spot on my screen, but we can make it a dog's nose. So if I can't be across the vertical line, then it's no longer a push and I'm gonna lose my knees. So when you're SERPing out of straight tunnels, your math does have to be right, or somebody, you or your dog are gonna get hurt. So the only way I would SERP this, again, meaning running from here across. So now you gotta know that your dog won't cut behind you. So hopefully your head is turned. This hand might actually be behind you reaching out to the dog. Sometimes it's hard when you're doing course designer and you're taking a snapshot. So probably if I did this again, I would have the handler's hand behind, reaching back for the dog. So if my dog was approaching from, my dog could actually have been approaching from the yellow or the pink quadrants. And depending on my tunnel training, depending on my entrance training. And some people though in class, they'll stop to get the dog in the tunnel where my cursor is now in the blue quadrant. And then they're on a collision course. So if I was gonna SERP from 1 to 2 from this side of the course, I would have to be sure that I could be on this side of that line before my dog exited. In this, so this shows how to do it. This shows where, so this is when I'm deciding if I'm gonna make it. So my question is, can I get from this point of execution, I call it, to this point of execution in the time that it takes for the dog to go from here through the tunnel to right where my cursor is. And that must be a dog's nose, because I would have 2 spots on my screen in the same place. My screen is dirty, but it's not that bad. So you guys, the problem is I can tell a handler to do that, and that handler can be right in that exact spot and send that dog, and they can head for that spot. But here's all the things that make a difference. How the handler does the footwork out of that turn. Because if they do a pull, they're gonna step, can you see my cursor? They're gonna step this way, and then they're not gonna get to there fast enough. Or sometimes they'll step back or they'll bow. People will hear me say in class, do not bow. So this handler has to rotate so that her feet, when she rotates, are exactly on that line. So she is 100% taking the shortest number of steps to that spot. The other thing the handler might do is he might not be sure when to go. So when you're doing your tunnel training, so remember I said toe on vinyl. So Quilly Bear, my Jack Russell, was tiny, and my rule with her, until I found it unacceptable and trained it different, was if I got 1 toenail on vinyl, I had permission to go. Tuxedo, I've learned how to rotate my waist, and I can be telling him tunnel, 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 and looking at this path while I'm leaving. And that will not pull him off the tunnel. I can leave at the exact same moment, in the exact same footwork, on the exact same line. And if I don't say tunnel, 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 and I don't look at the line, I turn and run and say, I don't care about that anymore. I take my attention and my voice with my feet instead of leaving my attention and my voice with my dog. That will pull him off. So I just want to help folks learn all of the contributing factors. And that's what I was talking about. If I keep my eye on the path, and if I say tunnel, 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 and if I rotate my waist as I go, and if I do the proper footwork, and if I travel the shortest path, and if I leave as soon as possible, I'll make perfect SERP position. So it's just like, okay, that's my job. If I don't, then I won't. But those are the key elements to success on that move. Unfortunately, what a lot of my students will do is they will try to leave from there. They'll leave one of those key elements out. The dog will pull off the tunnel and they'll say, I can't send from that far. I have to go here. Now the handling maneuver's off the table. It's not going to happen. They don't see that the footwork, the timing, and maybe they haven't trained, you know, or you just forget. You just panic and run and pull the dog off. I could do that any day of the week. So knowing this line too, that I wanted to send from the blue quadrant in order to make it, because I know if I leave at the right time on the right line with the right footwork at the right speed, I'll make it. I hope everybody understands why that's a SERP. If this was 3 jumps, if this jump was going this way and that was a jump and there was a jump right here, you would see it as a SERP. Jumps, SERP would be jumps 2 and 3 of the SERP. There's
Sandy, we have a question.
Okay.
Tanya's asking, for figure 3, is the waist rotation described to move the feet toward the jump too, but while keeping the upper body supporting the send to the tunnel?
Yes. The waist it's what I call in my footwork program, it's a lateral step footwork. So when you go lateral, your feet go one way as you look, you're just looking behind you at your dog. Did that answer the question? Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So number 4, now, so you guys, let's do that. We're at 4:35 and I've been pretty good about ending right at 5. Let's go ahead and ask the questions about the diagrams as we're on them. Are there any other questions about 1, 2, and 3? You can go back to them if you need to. So if I come up with something in 5 and 6 and you're like, hold the phone on 3, you said, don't limit yourselves to questions. Okay, now there's a 3rd jump to handle. Each of these 3 handlers was in a different location when their dog entered the tunnel. Those that train with me know that I'm an absolute sticker for saying something to the dog as his head goes in the tunnel. And that would be our tunnel handling afternoon. But I'm always telling my dog a something, a direct something. He gets information when he goes into the tunnel is how I want him to exit. So as he enters the tunnel, their location when the dog entered the tunnel determined where they could be when the dog exited the tunnel. The black handler is about to rear cross at 2 to get to 3. The turquoise handler has just completed a front cross before 2, and the purple handler is executing the sequence as a serpentine. So I want to explain the hows and the whys of why each handler chose those maneuvers. So the black handler could not be where the purple handler and the blue handler were when the dog went into the tunnel. So her job, and this is when I did the feet first webinar a couple Saturdays ago, that was really fun. We're going to do another one in August, you guys. I talked about how you cannot simultaneously prevent and prepare for war. You gotta pick. So that is why if you're doing that rear cross, if you can't send to the tunnel or you don't want to send to the tunnel, or your dog likes rear crosses better than front crosses, and I do believe dogs have preferences, you would be working hard to use your real estate in a way that would absolutely prevent you from being in one of those other positions. And it would be very detrimental to try to turn one into the other because of the use of real estate and timing. So this handler is going to rear, this black dog goes with this black handler is going to rear 2 and rear 3. Because this is where she's going to be when her dog exits. She's finding a way to make it work. This handler can make it this far. And so that handler is going to do the front cross before the dog gets out. So this is the tricky bit, because I could say this is first choice handling. So first choice handling would be the handler, turquoise handler is here when the dog goes in the tunnel. That's what the text said. Yeah, that'd be sweet. Woohoo! Yeah, rock star in it. But what if you guys, you say, I can be here, not there. So that would be second choice handling. So then my question to myself is, could I still make it work? It's not ideal. It's not first choice handling. If I travel in this direction via the 3-step front cross, yes. I would only blind if I knew I could do it when the dog was back here. And if I could do that, I could do the front. So blind crosses, I've told you before, they're not my absolute specialty, but I do have my own rules and my criteria for them that I'm quite comfortable with. So there is a way to make the blind work there for sure, but we're talking the front cross for sake of argument. So you guys on that second choice handling, so you could say, even if I was only here, if I was able to run in this lane, talk to my dog and start my rotation when I arrived here, I would make it here before the dog made it here. That's not slick as snail snot. That's not hot dog in it, but I could make it happen if there was some reason that this front cross was such a better idea than the rear. If I thought I was going to be here when the dog exited, I would rather do a difficult, awkward rear than a real bad front cross. Do I ever plan a real bad front cross? Give me just a second. Do I ever plan a real bad front cross? Yep. Sometimes I plan a real bad front cross. But I have to do a lot of extra things to help my poor dog. Anne-Marie, did we have a question?
Yes. What do you say? What are the things you say to your dog when they're in the tunnel?
As they go in, they're either being told to look for me, an obstacle, to go straight, or to turn. So they're getting a directional or an obstacle, or both. So if there was an A-frame in front, as soon as they went into the tunnel, they'd be hearing go on, scramble, go on, scramble, go on, scramble. If I needed them to come do a tight turn out of the tunnel, if I needed them to come to this jump, it would be tucks, because I want eyeballs. As soon as I get eyeballs, I'll do a redirect. If I'm in a gray zone where the turn is a little, you got to know, I'm just going to stay here 30 seconds. I love talking about tunnels. You have to know your dog, because some dogs come out of tunnels looking for obstacles, and some dogs come out of tunnels looking for handlers. So that determines whether you use their name. I typically use their name when they go in. I've seen some handlers have a special word like tight or wrap if they're not using wrap for their jumps. That means they want a hairpin turn. They want that dog to come out in hairpin, and there's a special cue for it. My next dog will have that. That's one of those things that I saw a hot shot do in competition and said, yep, I'll have that on my next one. Anybody else? Okay, so it looks like the purple handler doesn't have that much further to travel than the blue handler. Here's the trouble. It's called lane weaving or bobbing. And in Feet First, it teaches you how to do front crosses and open up your hips to a point that your rotation of your front cross, you end up determining the amount of the hip rotation to set the correct line, and it puts you in the correct lane. So setting a line and traveling in the correct lane are two different things. Lines and lanes are to be understood. So the only way I would SERP this is if I could send the dog, my cursor is going up and down in the lane. So it is quite a bit further because I'm not, so say the jump I was coming to was from here, and I was here when the dog went in. Well, first of all, I'm never, ever, ever going to make that. So let me say something a little different here. What if I'm here where the cursor is, where the dog goes in? That's perfect. So if I follow the dog, if I follow the dog into the tunnel and backtrack, I have to backtrack the same real estate. That's a worthless waste of time. So the only way I would do the SERP is if I got the dog into the tunnel without leaving this lane. So imagine this a lane on the freeway. Once I'm out of that lane, now I'm in the front cross lane. I'll be blue handler now. I'm not going to come into the tunnel and then try to run away and get up there to SERP. So that lane would be planned where I would be in this lane when I put the dog in the tunnel, or SERP would not be on my, my menu. Okay. This handler is determined that she wants to do a front cross at the left wing of jump 2, so she needs to be in the green quadrant. She can get into this position from either side of the tunnel by sending her dog to the tunnel and running a direct line to the execution point for the front cross. One route is longer than the other. So she wants to do the front cross here, so she has to do the math. So this handler, the course is coming from over here. She's going to run directly to there to get her front cross done. This handler has got that much further to run. So you guys, again, if she doesn't leave it at the right time, if she waste steps going, if she bows out or bows in, you've got to be able to do that math. You've got to be able to say, when you do a lateral motion footwork, you're traveling on the step number 1. If you do a pull, you're taking 2 steps and going nowhere. That's effective on a tight turn, but it's not on something like this. So that math right there is what I'm doing. Can I get there from there in the time it's going to take the dog to do that? But both handlers, one handler is starting in the green quadrant, one starting in the blue, have to end up in that same spot. Figure 6, this handler is not able to send her dog to the tunnel to get ahead, so she has planned to execute a rear cross at jump 2 and then will travel to jump 3. So this was the 3 handlers, and she could actually do another rear cross on 3 if she had to go this way. Rear crosses are somehow in our sport, they got to be the ugly cousin of handling. I've won some big shit with rear crosses, and I love them and I teach them well. And rear crosses you need them, get good at them. I have this theory that dogs that like to be, you know how when dogs play, they like to be chased or chased. There's a chasee and a chaser usually, and there's lots of dogs do both, but usually your dog prefers one. I'm kind of noticing that some of the dogs that like to be chased, like handlers that do rear cross handling, they dig that being driven from behind. Okie doke. It is 4:45, and I know some of you have to leave at 5. So what I think I'll do is go quickly through these and give you guys time. If anybody has to leave, you can tell Anne Marie in the chat box that you have a question and you have to leave right at 5. So this handler was coming from a place on the course that allowed her to use excellent send skills to send the dog over 20 feet to the tunnel. This enabled her to handle this section of the course as a serpentine. The blue line shows the most efficient path from the point of execution, the send cue to the tunnel, to the next point of execution, the serpentine handling position. So once again, she was even in a lane over and was able to even converge on that jump. What I was talking about before is that anywhere from here, you can make SERP. But what I didn't say is you could have also gotten there anywhere from over here on course. Again, what I wouldn't have done, what I avoid like the plague, is going in and then having to backtrack on my real estate to get into the lane that I need to be in for SERP. So this is right back to what we were talking about. This is my favorite. This is what I was talking about. This is box configuration handling. Years and years ago, many of us trained with a man named Greg Darrett, and he did a video called Great Dog Shame About the Handler. And it's box work, and it's brilliant. It's positional cues. I think everybody in the sport should absolutely know Greg Darrett's box work. I don't know anybody that studied under Greg that doesn't still get value from it. Lots of people have moved on and incorporated lots of other handling stuff, but to me, it's just nothing's come close as basic for boxes, for box configurations that we see in both AKC and USDA all the time. So this is a classic scenario where many handlers will struggle with the decision of where to put the front cross before or after jump 7. The choice is easy for me because it's one of the deals I've made with my dogs. My first choice will always be to execute the front cross as far down the line of the course as possible. One of the quadrants of blue is further down the path of the course. It's just simply closer to the obstacle that is closer to the end of the course. It's just further down. To get to that point of execution, my dog will need to take 6 without me running all the way to it. So 5 and 6, 7 is a pinwheel. So my front cross will go here because this quadrant is closer to 9. It's also, I put front crosses on the diagonal, and if I put the front cross between 6 and 7 in this quadrant, I would do that if I wanted that jump. So I can't do that. That's what I would do if I wanted something else. So I would have to plan way up here to be moving towards that 5. And I would be working a go on. I'm pointing like as if you can see my hand. I would be working a go on to 5, way up in here. Whatever this obstacle was, I would hope it wasn't the table. I would hope it was something that I could shoot. And I'd be saying, go on. And all of that go on before 5 would buy me 6. What a lot of people do is they say, go jump for 5. And then they're in decel on takeoff of 5, which is holy grail. And then they start frantically trying to get the dog out to 6. Now they're caught flat-footed and they're going, see, I knew I should have run in here and done the front cross on this side and then jammed on the dog's line. We got a question?
Yes, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to get this right, but I will ask it. In figure 7, is it wrong to be even further lateral to number 3? So that you are on the right outside of number 3, not in the middle of number 3. Is that right?
Yeah. Yes. So she's asking, could you be here and still work too? Yeah. Yeah, and this handler could be over a little bit more. We could say that this handler was going to rear 3 and go that way. But if her course went up here, she actually would want to be free of that wing. So, and could she be up here and work 2 from the landing side of 3? Could 2 be served from the landing side of 3? The answer is yes. It could be worked from anywhere along here. Okay? Did I get it? I can't hear you. You're muted, Anne Marie.
I think you did. Yes. I think you did.
Okay. So this front cross here is the one where people will be afraid of pulling the dog off 6 because they're going to run in here and decel and then try to skedaddle over there. So the word is finesse. And learning how to do pinwheels so that you put your mojo long before 5. Everything you do when your dog is up here buys you 6, and then you can make a smooth transition to put that front cross there. I do not like running around the outside of a jump to go back on course. My dog will be taking this bar like this So I will be T-boning his line. So those of you that train with me and we get into what I'll call discussions over what T-boning is. Now, you guys, could you get way up there before the dog got to 7 and change the line positionally? Yes, you could. And that is what you would have to do. If you could not, maybe you've got a little Papillon, tiny Chihuahua that just is learning sense, and you have to go in here, then your job is to be up here to change this line before the dog takes 7. That's second choice handling. It'd be third choice handling in my world. But there's, as long as you know how to make second choice and third choice handling work. If you're here when the dog takes the jump, you're really going to be T-boning, and you're going to create a dog that can't trust you because you're going to be jamming into him because you're cueing this jump if you're over here as he's taking 7. Takeoff side versus landing side. This one's going to go fast. This is my classic pet peeve. Takeoff side is, decel on takeoff is holy grail #1 for me. It's like thou shalt not kill. Thou shall not pass the refusal line unless the next obstacle is on that course, even on the other side of that jump, even as much as the blue handler is. He's on the refusal line. But he was going past that jump when the dog was in the information zone. You guys, if you're moving that direction when your dog is in the information zone, you know what you're saying? I promise you there's no turn cue coming. I promise. And then you go dig, 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 dig after they've left the ground. And that's why bars fall. And that's why people are bitten. That was a joke. So this handler is clearly in decel. Now, I've had handlers go, yeah, I was on decel and takeoff, and the dog still went wide, and this dog's still not blah, 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 blah. Well, you didn't do it in time then. You got to figure out where your information zone is, and you got to play with the distance on these 2 jumps. And you got to do that decel drill that we did on week 1, where you're not showing the dog a rotation. He's learning decel on takeoff as a concept on his own. So even if this wasn't back to this jump, even if this jump was over here, if you want the dog to turn, you would not pass the refusal line. You guys, that's what the quadrant is all about. You know, when you cross the refusal line, you know when you're in the space of the jump, and you know when you cross you stay on the left side or the right side. You know the significance. I'm going to stay longer. I'm going to stay a few minutes longer. Weave poles can also be split into quadrants in order to make handling decisions. I would be located in the blue quadrant if jump A was the next course on obstacle, or the green quadrant if jump B was next. If jump C was the next obstacle, I'd be in the yellow quadrant. So a lot of times handlers, so the dogs are entering from this end, guys. I should have had a dog down there. So a lot of times when jump C is the jump, handlers will come past the end of the poles and then double back. And again, anytime you're double backing on course, there's probably a better way. But as soon as I pass this pole 12, I'm taking jump C out of play. Jump C stays in play if I don't pass 11. So I would be moving at a rate of speed along my dog to where leather of his nose hit 11, the line would be set to C. For A, just the fact that I would try to be right here, or if I was doing parallel here, anywhere on this line for C. And this is whether I'm running on this side. I'm sorry, for A, I would come over here. For C, if I started on this side and rear crossed, I would still not pass pole 11. And for B, I would, whatever side I was on, my goal would be to be on this side of this line before the dog's nose hit 12. I'm always planning, where will I be when the nose hits 2 and where will I be when the nose hits 12? That's part of my walkthrough planning. So this is the blue quadrant before the teeter hits the ground, no matter where I was when the dog got onto the teeter. So I have rules for myself with my positions that I'm going to be in the quadrant before the dog reaches the apex of the A-frame, before the teeter hits the ground, before they hit the descend on the dog walk. That's first choice handling. So the teeter's easy because I want to be done before that board hits the ground. So the lower quadrant to do the rear, higher for a front cross, and just over the line to do the push. So the push would mean this handler should be up a little bit, you guys, because this push handler, the path would be where my cursor is, and that handler should actually be there. So that is if the dog is getting on the teeter on the handler's left, and the handler is converging on the teeter where my cursor is. So I would want to be right there when the board hits the ground for the push. I would want to be back a little bit for the rear. This rear cross guy, he's a little too close to this stanchion for me. My rear cross, I'm paranoid about being on this stanchion for a rear cross. I do not want to be there. That's the stanchion I want to be on for a wrap. So I'd probably be where this guy is. He's in the path a little bit, so I could do that diagonal rear. Front cross guy is perfect. So that's knowing for those three different turn cues. I would work hard to be in the green quadrant. If the next obstacle was jump A or B, I would be further up in the green quadrant for jump A. If I wanted to go to jump C or the tunnel next, I would plan to be in the purple quadrant. I would be in these destinations before my dog hit the ground, as if he has a 2-on-2 contact performance, and I would be at my spot when he was at the apex of the A-frame for a running performance. This is valuable, reliable information that the dog can count on. So you guys, these are positional cues, and they are a system of communication, just like the footwork. You combine the two and you got clarity. You can see how important it is to teach the dog to do his performance no matter where you end up. The same principles apply to the dog walk. So I think that this is clear that whichever, this is probably the easiest one. Maybe we should have gone there first. So it's just now 4:01. I'm hoping Anne-Marie can hang out with me for 10 minutes. We've done good in the past with I end talking right at 30 minutes. We were just patting ourselves on the back for that to leave more time for questions. So forgive me for my tangents this afternoon. I hope they were valuable. And now I'm going to stop screen sharing. And I am going to open it up for questions. Is everybody sleepy? Is it hot where you're at? It's only 105 where I'm at. Hi, Carol.
I have a question, and this may be a whole different discussion.
Okay.
My dog is pretty good at understanding. I think our communication is pretty good, whether we do a front, whether we do a rear, whether we do a blind. What eludes me is when I'm walking a course, how to take the shortest path to be faster. Does that make sense? And I've tried counting off different steps, because if I do a front cross, my dog may have to take more steps. If I do a blind cross, my dog is faster, doesn't have to take as many steps. Does that make any sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, it sure, of course it does. What I do is I walk the dog's path, and then I decide when I'm going to make my move based on where the dog is. And I simply look at point where I'm at to where I want to go. And I visualize where the dog has to go. And I just check a box. If I do this and this and this, if I run at as fast as I can personally go with my head turned, and I leave when the dog is here, and I do proper footwork and take the most direct route, can I make it? And I have to check a box, yes or no. I have to guess. And then I have to say, I don't think I can. So when he's here, when he gets to this critical spot, I will have to start bringing up my hand and talking to him to say we're turning anyway. I would never do that with a blind cross though. The folks that are saying, come to this side, trying to save the day on a blind cross, please only do blind crosses if it's in the bag. It's an easy thing. You know you're going to be on the other side of that path before the dog has any question whatsoever. But the fronts, you can learn to teach your dog, I'm sorry, pal, I'm not going to make, you know you're not going to make it. I plan front crosses that I know I'm not going to make, but I still start working the turn where the dog needs the information. His information zone doesn't change. I love being in the perfect position, but I will have that emergency backup communication. So you have to guess, and you get better and better at it. And yeah, you just sort of like, you know, can I get, this is my path. And if I leave here and that's his path, and sometimes I just have to breathe and say, he has to go all the way out there and do the tunnel. I can make it. I have to leave when he's here. I can't mess about. Okay. Does that help, Carol?
Yes, thank you.
It's a guess. You have to make your best guess. Anybody else? Questions? I'll remind you, if you got value, there is a donation button. It lives on the website. And the other way to really help me is to promote and see if we can get more folks. Anne Marie, did you get a question?
Yeah, it's on the donations. So right now donations are available through PayPal. I got a question regarding alternates.
Oh,
And I thought, well,
yeah.
but
there is, it's my address, and I should put that on the website. So I don't know if you can type this in the chat right now,
Sure.
Anne Marie.
Yeah, I can. Are they make it payable to Ace or Sandy?
Ace Dog Sports, thank you for that. It's Sandy Rogers, and it's 1424 G as in George Street, just the letter G Street. And that's lovely Rio Linda, 2 words, and Linda's just like the lady's name, Rio, R-I-O, Margaret. Rio Linda, and the zip is 95673, 95673. So
We'll probably pull that off. We'll probably pull that off the recording.
Could you put that back up again, Anne Marie? It was
Sure.
that visual up again.
For
Address. Was that lovely?
Carol, it's in the chat. Can you see the chat?
Yeah, but it is not staying up. Oh, wait a minute. Let me see.
You got it?
Yeah, got it. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions about the 4 quadrants? Next week, we're going to do getting the most out of the dog that you have. And it's about how to provide your dog with what they need. And it's also going to be a little bit, if you have friends in this boat, about like accepting that dog, and if you can or not, and how to deal with some of the mental stuff that goes along when you've got a dog that you're struggling with. It's a part of our sport. So we're going to go into specific training issues with certain types of dogs. It's funny, I said independent dogs. So independent dogs and shy dogs, and training tips, specific training tips for those dogs. But we're also going to go into some of the more mental pieces for the handlers that have dogs, and they're questioning their relationship a little bit, and struggling with being fulfilled by that particular dog, and getting how to balance and work through disappointment if it's there with that particular dog, and how to make decisions moving forward that's best for you and the dog. So it'll be kind of half and half, and it's how to get the most out of the dog that you have. And then if you have other topics that you'd like to do, feedback on how it's working, anything, I'm open. It's new, I'm flexible, and thank you all so much for coming.